If you hate running like I do and you still want to run 100 miles, this is the video for you. I'm going to show you how I ran 3 days a week for no more than 30 miles average and still completed a 100-mile run. This is to finish. This is not going to be winning the 100. Stay tuned towards the end because I'm going to get into the one thing I definitely neglected to train that came back to bite me in the butt. Let's get into it. If you're like me, you have a bunch of hobbies or you have a bunch of other responsibilities to do, and running just kind of doesn't fit into the plan, but running 100 miles looks like something that you really want to do. With my past ultras, I knew that there's going to be two things that are really going to make the difference in a 100-mile race, and that is number one, being able to deal with the sleep deprivation, and number two, training time on feet. Time on feet just simply means being able to do a long hike or other slow movement for the entire day. That's going to replicate what a 100 is. Now, here's the things that I did. Number one, I started off my training program with the 4x4x48 challenge. Now, that is designed by David Goggins. It's run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Now, you're already like, well, that's 48 miles in a week. Yeah, it is. That was probably my largest actual training event of the entire year. Now, this was such an exceptional program because it obviously was giving you the running volume, but it was also giving you the confidence to deal with sleep deprivation. And it was actually out of this training block that I started to really have confidence in being able to operate under a lot of sleep deprivation. Now, this is in March of every year he puts it on. I would totally jump on that. I think it was super invaluable. Am I going to do it again this year? Probably not. Now, number two was mountaineering. So mountaineering, I found, was one of the best crossovers to running 100 miles, and here's why. The summits that I did this year included Mount Hood, Adams, Shasta, and Rainier. Oh, and I also did Mount Baker. Now, all of these, I was getting time on feet plus the sleep deprivation, because a lot of them we would wake up at 1 o'clock and start going, and there was little to zero sleep in between. On Mount Rainier, in fact, it was a 20-and-a-half-hour day. 20 hours and 30 minutes of just straight moving, no sleep. All of those combined really, I think, helped me with the mentality of being able to go in there and absolutely crush the night once the night fell. When it started getting to nightfall, I literally was grabbing those experiences from my belt and trying to remember the awful feelings I was feeling during those times and trying to remember that I did it for a reason and this was why I was doing it. The other thing I did was a ton of biking. So 3 bike packing trips, a ton of miles on them, a lot of mountain biking. It was in the mountains, so there was a lot of climbing, a lot of elevation. Now, this doesn't give you necessarily time on feet or the sleep deprivation, but it does give you just being out there all day, sunrise to sunset. I also started biking to and from work, to and from working out, so just a little bit of extra cardio and leg strength. It was also really good to cross train because, again, I was getting sick of running. As far as running, though, I did about 700 miles in preparation for this 100. My longest run was 41 miles, and that was around the Timberline Trail, and that had about 11,000 feet of vert. That was by far my longest training run. I think my second longest training run was 26 miles, and that was out at the coast. I just ran about 3 days a week. I would do like a 10-mile run earlier in the week. I would do a kind of a 5-6 mile run in the middle of the week. Then I would do a long run on the weekends, and that was it. What really played dividends for me, I believe, was this training system by Uphill Athlete. I actually listened to their podcast. They were talking about muscular endurance, which is essentially your muscles just being able to work for a long period of time. The podcaster had a client that he did this with on the podcast, and he said that he was running a 200-mile ultra, and at the end of it, his legs were still amazing, especially when he was crushing the downhill. Now, the muscular endurance workout that Uphill Athlete provides is totally free, which is crazy. It's a PDF. I'll leave the link in the description, but it focuses a lot on eccentric loading. So especially like when you're going downhill, like how your muscles are lengthening and then trying to stop you. It's that eccentric loading. A lot of it is training that. And I just found it to be amazing. It got progressively harder every week. And then I ended up cutting it out about, this is really important. I ended up cutting it out about 8 weeks before the race. I did no muscular training at all. I just focused on more speed work, which is something I should have mentioned in the mileage that I was doing. I cut that out and I started doing hill work or hill repeats in place of the actual muscular training. If you listen to the Uphill Athlete, they actually say that this is a really hard workout. So they actually say that there's a lot of residual fatigue left over, even if you've not done it for 2 to 3 weeks. So you have to cut it out early. So another workout that you could actually do is lifting the mouse and hitting that like button and also subscribing to this channel. And as a thank you, here's a picture of my ex-roommate with a cat. The next thing I did was Markow's training systems. I have actually an online subscription to them that I just paid the yearly fee because I knew that I was going to use it every week. And so I did at least 2 things a week on their page. Usually I would separate this into lower body and upper body, but I did a lot of hip mobility, ankle mobility, knee, all that type of stuff. And I knew that that was going to be a big deciding factor in my durability for the entire race. Now, all of this worked famously. I mean, it worked perfectly. There was nothing that I would change about it. My muscles were totally good. Quads were good. Glutes were good. Everything was good to go by the end of the race. The only thing that I would change is the fact that I needed to train my tibialis anterior more. I definitely neglected to train that at all during my entire lead up for this, and I paid for it. I paid for it hard. Both ankles, both shins were just absolutely fired up by the end of the run. My left one, obviously, I could barely walk on it. It's been over a week and I'm still getting shooting pains out of it. I think a lot of this has to do with the crushing descents. So especially if you're in a mountain ultra, this is something that you're going to really look at. Just look up tibialis anterior exercises on YouTube and you will see some of the easy exercises that you can do for it to prevent this. I have some awesome shirts in the description for sale. Peanut Butter Mountains, there's Run Mountains, there's Coffee and Cold Mornings. Ton of different shirts that I always am getting a bunch of compliments on when people get them, so I figure I should probably plug them a little bit more. So feel free to get those in the description, help out the channel. Otherwise, here's 2 videos that I think you might like next.